Gentlemen, be prepared for what I'll just flat out say. What you are about to hear, you may disagree with, you may find unpleasant, but you got to deal with it. It's reality. I keep denying it myself. Will our economy disintegrate? It's possible. Nobody can know for certain. Yeah. Nobody knows when the big events happen. They come unexpected, but you can see the events leading up to the big thing, certainly.
Well, I know on December 21st, 2012, the world ends. But between now and then, there's a lot of uncertainty.
Crapshoot. A lot of uncertainty. Before the world ends.
Yes.
On the phone with us is trends researcher from the Trends Research Institute, or Council, or Center. What is it officially, Gerald?
Well, it's the Trends Research Institute. Now, a publication, of course, is the Trends Journal.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gerald Celente is here.
You.
Great to see you. What's okay? Let's look at the next 6 months, and more, it's become a mainstream idea that the government, the economy, us as a people could collapse. What do you see happening?
Well, look at, there's a saying that we have in the business, current events form future trends. You pick up today's Financial Times, which was really one of my must-read newspapers every day.
That's out of London, correct?
Yeah. It's really pretty balanced, actually, particularly for a financial newspaper. And the headline, the big story, fears over U.S. outlook spark fall in dollar. And I say fears? What fears? I just heard President Obama, the Fed flack Bernanke, and the Treasury Secretary flunky Geithner yesterday in the New York Times all touting recovery. There's no recovery. There's much as a recovery in the economy, just like they tell you. And listen to the words carefully, because they repeat them all the time. Just like there's, quote, progress in Afghanistan.
There is none.
They say it every day. You could pick up the paper. I could read to you, actually, from Tuesday's New York Times. This is the end of the story. And President Obama made clear it was about Afghan not being open. It's important that the American people know that we are making progress. I'm an American person, and I'm not stupid. You're not making any progress in Afghanistan, and you're not making any progress on the economy. This thing is a loser. They've been robbing us blind. The greatest, this is 3 years since this financial crisis began, and we pinpointed it, by the way. It's all there in writing. Right. It's factual.
Now, to tell people who haven't heard of you or heard your theories before, what is it? Why are we in such a deep hole? What are the specific elements that brought us to this precipice?
Okay, go back to 2000. The stock market, the Dow crashes. Remember, everybody was .com nuts.
Right.
It was at 5,000. The NASDAQ was at 5,000. Today it's worth about 2,300. So when you hear these guys say stay in it for the long term, like how about 100 years? But the point being, when the markets collapsed in 2000, they should have let it collapse. You take your losses. But no, the guys on Wall Street are money junkies. They don't like to lose. So what happened right after 9/11, this is several months later, the Greenspan lowers interest rates to 46-year lows. They reinfuse the market with cheap money. Hey, you got that house? Turn it into a piggy bank. How about a home equity loan? We used to call them second mortgages, and when you got one, you were a loser.
Right.
So they flooded the market with cheap money, created another bubble. That bubble burst in just about 3 years ago today, this time of the year. And what they did again is they kept lowering interest rates rather than letting these clowns take their losses. So here's the tragedy of it all. They just reshaped the whole country. They made up this thing too big to fail. Who made this one up? This is capitalism. You rise and fall on your own merits. So what they did was now they've created the banks that are even bigger. Check it out. 8 banks control 80% of the action in the country.
Now, what are these? Give me names of some of these banks so I can avoid them.
Well, all of them. J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan, by the way, I mean, I love it. They call it a revolving door. They just hired, a Clinton flunky from his former economic team. They just hired him. This guy. No, another guy to do work for them. This was just an FT today. Mm-hmm. And they call it a revolving door. It's not a revolving door. It's one door. The one door is open. It's called Wall Street, and Wall Street owns Washington. Look at the names. Before, under Bush, you had Henry Paulson. Henry Paulson was he was the Treasury Secretary, the guy that invented the whole TARP program. And I remember when he came out, the day he came out with it, said it was there to rescue all the poor Americans that had real estate problems. It was nothing of the kind. He was the CEO of Goldman Sachs. Rubin, under Clinton, former CEO of Goldman Sachs. Geithner, the Treasury Secretary now, a flunky under Rubin, and his right-hand man is the head of Goldman chief guy with Goldman Sachs.
So it's a lot of self-dealing.
Commodity Future Trading Commission guy, Gensler, Goldman Sachs.
So what's the big plan?
The J.P. Morgan guys, the Bear Stearns gang, they're all running the country. Let people grow up about this.
Now, as I've said this before on the show, and I really do believe it's being handled poorly on all sides, at every facet, because I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism, but it seems to me that when the market crashed, they told us about things that were too big to fail, so we're not going to let you fail. Now they just passed this regulation, which doesn't allow us to take what they consider to be extreme risk. So when you remove risk and you remove failure, you've removed capitalism. That's what it's about.
Capitalism is dead, and that's the point that I'm making. When this collapse happened, they changed the game. And all these people out there are screaming, oh, Obama's a socialist and no, he's not. We own companies now like AIG. We never knew what an AIG was. AIG, Freddie Mae, Fannie Mac, Chrysler, General Motors. You go down the line, chunks of Citigroup. The merger of state and corporate powers, opined Mussolini, is called fascism. Fascism has come to America. Look at the game, man. Who owns all the retail business? Who owns all the agriculture? Who owns all the pharmaceutical? They put it in the hands of a few. They've taken over the country. The mom and pops are dead.
So are you saying this that right now, and I think I'm following you, like you take a large company and their first duty right now is to please the state?